Let's move on to the Cowboys, which Jamie, I'm not gonna lie to you, okay? This first half, I'm sitting there going, finally, right? Finally, the Eagles have gotten this offense rolling. They go to A.J. Brown. He gets the ball. I'm like, okay, everybody's going to be quiet. This is going to be nice. They could coast in the second half, run the ball to Saquon. And then they went punt, 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 miss field goal, punt, miss field goal. I don't know if this was an Eagles loss or this was a Cowboys win. Which one are you taking away from this?
I don't want to not give the Cowboys credit, but I did feel like this was an Eagles loss. Very interesting stat that came out. They were held scoreless in the second half of this game, and they have had the second most scoreless halves in the NFL this season. That was their third time this season they've had a completely scoreless half. The only team that has had more with 4 was the Tennessee Titans, who you should probably check where they are in the standings right now. And there's a significant difference between those two teams. This is a fascinating thing because I think this game says a little bit more about Philly than it does against Dallas. So, but I will say this. Dak Prescott's playing really, really good football. It's unfortunate that the defense is in the shape that it's in because I feel like Dallas has a lot figured out on offense now. The addition of George Pickens has been absolutely phenomenal. And by the way, he's been their wide receiver 1 for about a month now. I know we all love CeeDee Lamb, but that offense runs through George Pickens and Javonte Williams, who's having a complete career resurgence, one of the most efficient running backs in the entire NFL so far this year. And Dak Prescott's been playing great football. I am very impressed with them. My concern with them when it comes to making the playoffs is they're still a little ways away. I'm looking at the standings right now, right out here off the screen. Game and a half back right now of San Francisco for the 7 seed. And here's their remaining schedule. They have home against Kansas City on Thanksgiving, at Detroit. Those are going to be 2 really tough games for them coming out right away here. Then home Minnesota, home Chargers, at Washington, at the Giants. It gets a little bit easier that last month, but I think at this point you're going to have to, and we'll see what the 49ers end up doing, but you're going to probably at minimum have to go 4-2, if not 5-1, to get yourself back into this equation right now. I don't think they're winning the division. I don't think they're going to get there. So I don't think they're going to quite get there, but I do think we're going to look back at the end of the season and kind of wonder. I know obviously the Micah Parsons stuff is going to be held out there principally, but I think the entire offseason, if you look at what they could have done to add to their secondary, other pieces, defense has been an issue in Dallas for a minute now. Like this is not like some new, this was an issue before the Micah Parsons trade. It just became 100%. A bigger one, but Quinnen Williams is playing good football for them up front now in that addition. And you just start to wonder of like, this team could have been good enough to kind of get in there if they would have had. Now, again, you have the butterfly effect of, you don't make the Quinnen Williams change if you have Parsons and you start to talk about all those things. But I would say this. I think this is a team that is going to flirt with it because they have a little bit easier stretch down the stretch there. Minnesota doesn't look very threatening. Chargers are really banged up. And then Washington, the Giants are the 2 worst teams in your division. You've got a shot at this. I just think they've dug themselves a little bit too big of a hole. But I do want to give that offense credit because as an entire unit, they have really kind of figured it out. And the Eagles defense, despite all the troubles that the offenses has had this year at times, that defense is still elite. And they were able to overcome a 21-point deficit to win that football game. And by the way, also included a missed field goal from Brandon Aubrey as well. So they were able to do a lot in that second half. And Dak played really good football. I'm really encouraged by what I've seen from them so far, especially now with the draft capital that they have to kind of make some other moves on the other side of the ball. I just don't think it's going to quite be enough to get in this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reality is if Dak playing at this level, it's really a shame that this offense and what you're seeing from them on that side of the football isn't complemented by a above average or even average defense. Now, I know they're very happy they got the Quinnen Williams trade. You've got Kenny Clark now. You brought in DeMarvion Overshown has come back from injury, and it's helped. Right? But you cannot be, we know this, especially in the history of the NFL, you cannot be a bottom 15 defense and win in the postseason. It's just not going to happen. And you sure as hell can't if you have to go on the road. And Dallas, as it sits, would be a wild card team and would have to go on the road and likely have to play somebody outside. right? And that's not going to, when you're talking about that time of the year, the explosiveness that this offense has indoors is not going to carry when you're going potentially to Chicago to play outside in the wintertime, to Philadelphia, to any of those teams that are going to be outside in the weather conditions that you're going to have to deal with. So Dallas, as much as you kind of have this, Dallas is in such a, they're in purgatory. That's where you're stuck. You are in purgatory. You guys are in a position where you're good enough that Jerry can sell you a fake ship, and you're not bad enough that you're actually going to be in a position to actually make the adjustments and changes that you need to. And I worry that I understand what George Pickens is doing and how exciting he is, but you sign him to a max deal or whatever his deal is going to have to be. And then between he and CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, 70% of your salary cap's gone, and you can't go sign any players, and you're not drafting well enough to, and it's rinse repeat with the Cowboys, right? We continue to have the same conversations about this team. And unfortunately, Cowboys fans, I think I'm not breaking news to you any longer. Until Jerry relinquishes some control, this is just what you're going to be, right? And I guess the best thing I could tell you is enjoy Dak Prescott, because really this year he's having a phenomenal year, and you can enjoy the explosiveness and the fun of your team, but don't expect this team to make a postseason run. I think those are unrealistic expectations.
Agreed, but I think we also need to give a shout out. Now, you and I have talked about this off air, but the Brian Schottenheimer hire was probably the most critical hire in terms of the critics talking about it. And, remember going back and forth, who are they going to bring in? You talk about some of the huge names, and it became Schottenheimer, and everyone's like, oh, Jerry's an idiot. This is the best version of this Dallas Cowboys offense in years. And
100%.
And I think he deserves a lot of credit for it, in addition to Dak playing well and staying healthy. I mean, Dak's had some really rough injuries that have derailed his run, but he just set the record for what, most passing yards in Dallas Cowboys history. Like, you start to think about, and I know in that organization, if you don't have a ring, you can't be considered the best quarterback in the franchise. I get it. You have Staubach, you have Aikman there. I understand, but that's a pretty significant record, particularly for somebody that has missed as much time as Dak Prescott has.
100%.
And I just really am excited for what this offense can do long term, even if it's not George Pickens next year, if it's another cheaper or younger weapon at wide receiver. They look like they have something they can build off of finally. I just don't think that the expectation that they're going to be able to turn it all around this year is going to work. I don't think they're quite good enough yet. I think they're good enough to be a 500-ish team, which I guess they can be now because they have a tie, so they can literally be 500 at the end of the year. But I think that's kind of where they are, and I'm encouraged. But this team needs a lot of work in the offseason to be a true contender. And until I see that work being actually done and done well, and the use of that draft capital and the cap capital done well, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit, because they're still the Cowboys. They still get a ton of attention, but there's still some things that they have to do. But I'm more optimistic about them now than I was going into the season, even prior to the Micah stuff. I'm more optimistic now than I was going into last offseason.
Honestly, by quite a bit. And I think that's, to your point, we've talked about the Schottenheimer stuff quite a bit. Jerry, as much as we like to pile on Jerry, that's one of those situations where he hit that one very well, and should have known, considering the coaching tree he comes from, who his father was, that he wasn't going to be a total jerk on the football field, right? Like, you should have known that just based off of pedigree and who his father was, he was probably going to know a little bit of something about being a coach. But I think the part of it that I probably underestimated the most, and is just based off of not seeing it, is how much of a player's coach he is, and how much he's galvanized the locker room. Because things like what happened with Marshawn Nealon, those are serious things that can really tear apart a locker room, not because you can't handle it. I mean, that's a real human thing that happened, and it was horrible, and it's an atrocity that the team has to deal with. And the fact that Schottenheimer's been able to, kind of steer this ship post that tragedy happening, that speaks to who he is and how quickly he has become a very good leader amongst that group of men, and how much respect Dak Prescott has for him, which you've seen, I think, carry out onto the football field.
Yeah, if you look at the season as a whole, the Micah Parsons thing was a massive distraction all offseason, carried into it, and then you have the trade so close to the start of the regular season. You have players on the Cowboys defense tweeting out how sad they are that Micah's gone. You deal with that. You deal with an injury to CeeDee Lamb where he missed multiple games.
Yeah.
You obviously deal with the completely unexpected and terrible tragedy of the Marshawn Nealon stuff.
Yeah.
You put that all together, and I mean, we're only 12 weeks into the season. That's not a long time.
Mhm.
That's a 13, 14-week period. All of these things have happened. And this
Yep.
is a team that has continued to get better. And it's a team that rallies around each other. And even when things were rough, you didn't hear a lot of infighting. You didn't hear a lot of people
No.
crying about Micah Parsons or I'm not happy about this, or the offense is mad at the defense for giving up you haven't heard any of that. And I think you got to take that's for a first year head coach. Now I understand that he is a Schottenheimer. That's not his first rodeo inside an NFL locker room, but that's
For
still
sure.
pretty impressive an amount of things to have to deal with, and not only deal with them well, but overcome and then start winning enough games. I mean,
Yep.
they're still 5-5-1. I mean, we
Yeah.
can talk about a lot of different scenarios of how they could have lost certain games, won certain games, but like I said, I'm encouraged by where this team sits. They have some work to do, but I do finally see a little bit of light peeking out of that tunnel in the
100%.
distance, which I did not feel, I would say, about 8 months ago about this team.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on the Cowboys here is it's something I mentioned in a couple of shows earlier because there was a lot of criticism, fairly criticism towards Matt Eberflus and the defense.
Mhm.
And I tried to caution and calm down Cowboys fans because as much as Bears fans would like to tell you that everything Matt Eberflus did was
Yeah,
bad, I can
yeah.
tell you the in-game situations, the coach, the timeouts, all that was horrible. But defensively, when he came in and what he was able to do the second half of the season that he came in as the Bears, this first year as a head coach, they went from being the worst run defense to being the best run defense the second half of the year. And he has a very complex defense. And I knew it was going to take some time. And I warned Cowboys fans, listen, give it time. If he can get them to be, I'm not expecting them to turn on to that level because they don't have the talent, but I do expect them to. Now they've got a couple more pieces that are helping
Mhm.
stop the run. You've got a couple more guys in there and guys that now they're going to get used to the playbook, get a little bit more comfortable with what the type of defense that they're running alongside what Brian Schottenheimer is doing. I think the
Mhm.
back half of this year will be much better for the Cowboys than we anticipated. And